Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this episode of In the Shade of Ramadan. Inshallah, in this episode we're going to be talking about modesty in Islam. And that is one of the most important qualities, one of the most important values that we have in Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, every religion has a distinct characteristic, and the distinct characteristic of Islam is modesty. And subhanAllah, when we look around the world today, whether you're in the East or you're in the West, one of the things that is very distinctive about a practicing Muslim is their modesty. And it's different. Sometimes it's construed as strange or weird, but it's also part of the definition of who we are. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also said that modesty is all good. Modesty is all good. And he also mentioned that modesty is one of the branches of faith itself. So when we think about this value, and then we look at our communities and we see what's going on, we realize that practicing modesty is an uphill battle. Whether you're going to the masjid, then you're looking at the way that people talk to each other in terms of not practicing humility, not being humble with one another, or in the clothing that people are choosing to wear. It's somewhat of a surprise to be in Ramadan, in Taraweeh, and realizing that more than half of the sisters in the room or in the hall praying are wearing skinny jeans, when we know that what the conditions of hijab are in Islam. And I don't want to focus so much on dress. I want to focus on this value of feeling shy, or this value of feeling a level of shame that stops a person from doing something that they know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be very displeased with. And there's external modesty, which is expressed through clothing and the way that a person carries their body, as well as through their character. And when you think about character, again, sometimes people think we're just talking about people who are flirtatious or people who are using bad words, and that's immodest. But it's not just that. You can be a very practicing Muslim, you can be a sheikh, you can be a teacher, and if you always need to be center of attention, it's not very modest. If you always need to be the loud one talking, the loud one everyone's looking at, the show off, that's not very modest. And so modesty goes beyond just the gender relations issue. It really has to do with feeling a sense of humility in front of God Himself, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. And so this Ramadan, let's look at our character. Let's look at how we talk to each other, whether it's in the masjid or outside. Let's not be modest in the masjid and then immodest outside, because the masjid may promote modesty while being out in public sometimes does not, or encourages immodesty. So in thinking about that, and realizing that when you practice modesty in a public space in the West, people are going to feel that that's a little bit strange. That's okay. We need to realize that's okay. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the distinct characteristic of Islam is modesty. That's how we're going to get known. That's how people know us. We have some quality of modesty. That doesn't necessarily mean you're very weird, or you're very awkward, or you have social anxiety. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm just referring to having humility in front of God, and that you deal with people on that level. The second aspect is modesty in your body and modesty in your dress. Again, when we look around the society, people are encouraging, especially women, to reveal it all. They're encouraging women to show it off. And you see the eating disorders that are all around us. And they're in us as well, in the sense that none of the social ills that the wider society is suffering from, the Muslim community is not immune from them. We see that young Muslim girls inside the masjid are also suffering from eating disorders. We see that they are also suffering from low self-esteem, and a self-esteem that's based on their body and their image. And subhanAllah, there's a beautiful hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ where he says that everyone else looks at your shapes and form, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He looks at your heart. So, building a self-esteem this Ramadan that is based on your relationship with God, and that's a very liberating thing. That is something that especially women in this country, Muslim or non-Muslim, they can benefit from. This idea of understanding yourself and your self-worth based on who you are as a servant of God. And subhanAllah, if you do end up being able to evaluate yourself on this level, it's not hard to dress in a way that you think that we know that God will be pleased with. It's not hard to wear the hijab. It's not hard to wear loose clothing. When we think about fitted clothing that defines the form, we have to question why. Why is it necessary that everyone wears pants that exactly shows the shape of the legs, or shirts that show the shape of the arms and the waist and the chest and whatnot. And subhanAllah, again, the fact that modesty is distinctive for the Muslims, and that this is not a culture that is compatible with Islam, this desire to reveal it all. We are not show-offs. Our bodies are not meant to be sold or displayed for others. We have an understanding of our body and our dress that is derived from our understanding of God Himself and what He wants from us. So when you get up in the morning and it's time to get ready, don't just wear good clothing to the masjid for Taraweeh. Try to wear something, and I'm not saying you have to wear jilbab. I'm not saying you have to wear clothing from the Middle East. Wear clothing that's from America, from the stores here in America. But just try to fulfill those conditions of being loose such that it doesn't reveal your actual form. And think about this concept that I heard a sheikh saying once. He said, when you get dressed in the morning, try to wear something that you feel you could walk into the gates of paradise with. Try to wear something that you can walk into the gates of paradise with. And external modesty itself is something that can only truly be derived from internal modesty. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that if you have no shame, then do whatever you want. And I think this is a really important thing for us to reflect on, that if we have no shame, we can easily do anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is displeased with. But there's a story that affected me. And when we're thinking about modesty, it's also important that we're humble about it, that we're not judgmental about it. There was a story of some young Muslims who were actually caught in a conference in a hotel room. And they were denying everything, and finally someone brought a Quran to them and said, swear in the Quran that what you were doing was appropriate. And up until that point, people who had witnessed the situation said, we just thought they were the worst people because look at what they're up to. And they're lying, and everyone knows they're lying. But when they brought the Quran to them and asked them, please swear on the Quran, all parties refused to do so. Not a single one of them would dare touch the Quran and swear to something that was a lie. And so subhanAllah, it was this element, this shame that they still had, that they still carried inside of them, that stopped them from doing that. And at that point, the people dealing with them realized, no, everyone makes mistakes, but there's still good in these people. So even if you're someone who makes mistakes all the time, as all humans do, realize there's still good inside of you. If you can look inside and realize that you do have some shame in front of God, that you wouldn't ever put your hand on the Quran and swear to a lie, for example. That's something to grow on. And this Ramadan, take a moment to reflect on this sense of shame and growing a sense of shame in front of God. When you're leaving the house, try to feel that shame, that you want to be humble in front of Him, that you don't want to displease Him, that you want to dress in a way that He would love you to dress, that you would carry yourself in that way, and that ultimately your self-esteem, your body image, whatever it is, it derives from your relationship with Him and no one else. Because at the end, this Ramadan is about coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, try to do it in developing your relationship with Him through modesty. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.